Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. Okay, so we are back here now with the second part of the Advanced HeroQuest Let's Play. So I did that little video break in between these last two videos about what happens when you go on an adventure and you don't actually find anything, right? You find empty tombs. And I, kind of explained to people why I don't have a problem with that. However, I did come up with a couple ideas that I just wanted to share with some people about what you could do if that happens, and if you wanted to make your adventure a little more interesting, or if you remember, I also made that video a while back called Yo Dog, I heard you like games, and games to play before you play other games, right? You could play Advanced HeroQuest as a game that you play before like another RPG or something, where you are, as like a DM or something, you are creating the dungeon. And then while you're playing it, you're kind of creating this, almost like this legend of this party that went through a particular dungeon, and then you could draw and map that out and then use this as a dungeon for another game. And you could especially do that if you add in, some of the more the charts from things like the Dungeon Alphabet and Table Fables, which these books have lots of charts with random elements for DMs to use to add some spice and some detail on the fly. For instance, this one here, Fable Tables 2, actually does have a really nice dungeon section starting on page 57. And so you have a whole bunch of charts that you can use for different dungeons, some D100 charts, and so all of these will have different aspects that you could use for, like, if you were to use Advanced HeroQuest and you were to map it, then you could go ahead and add in some detail. So if you roll a 33 here, this room might be a holy place. Many consider this dungeon to be a sacred place. Candles and offerings can be found scattered throughout the dungeon. So just little notes that you could add to your map while you were playing to kind of play Advanced HeroQuest, maybe not so much like a skirmish dungeon crawl, but playing it as almost like a how to host your dungeon. If you guys have played that print-on-demand game, where you are, using a game system to develop kind of like the ecology of a dungeon. But yeah, this book here has all kinds of stuff, different kinds of room types, bedrooms, closets, libraries, religious rooms, miscellaneous rooms, military, dungeon events. So if you wanted to just roll up some kind of event, you can have, let's see, I'll do 41 there. The players stumble across a massive pipe organ built into the structure of the dungeon. The instrument is functional, and its music will charm anyone who hears it. So, you could be in a room. Instead of this room just being empty, we could have said we found a pipe organ in there. Or you could just add that to your map just to add a little bit of detail to, to spice up the vision in your mind, in your imagination. And of course, Dungeon Alphabet has all kinds of stuff for doing that as well, for like hallways and rooms and caves and doors. So you could use this and get really elaborate detail for your map to be able to use the thing that you've made once your adventure is over in Advanced HeroQuest. So I did just want to bring that up as a couple more possibilities to maybe add to your games of Advanced HeroQuest, to add some different ideas of things to do. So what I also did is I went into here and I made these little tokens with a T on one side and an S on the other, just to show where I have searched for hidden treasure. And apparently it is kind of a modified house rule that I'm using for in the solo game when I am allowing myself to search for treasure. I don't let each of the heroes search for treasure individually. I just search one time and then for the party, and that's it. So I really do think, especially with that and then adding in the additional traps and chances for wandering monsters, I do think that searching for treasure like that is balanced. So one thing I did want to do though is I did want to scoot the dungeon over a little bit, because this is kind of a very oddly shaped dungeon. We're kind of we entered here. These hearts represent stairs out. This black heart here just represents a dead end. But we're kind of going like this, and we're being pushed off again back over here. So a little bit of an oddly shaped dungeon. And we have not really found any secret doors or anything yet, but I'm not going to be searching for those right now until we need to. So we are at the top of the hero phase. If you remember last time, we found this weapon rack here, and on the weapon rack we found a number of arrows for our elf. And so we are just going to go ahead and explore again and kind of head out and see what we can find. So we can move 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, so we can move here, and then we can look at our handy chart here to figure out what we find. So the first thing we do, of course, roll to see the passage, and it is a 9, so it's going to be 2 sections. All right, I'm going to take 2 sections like this, plop those down on the map there. Okay, now let's see what we find in those passages. 6. All right, and passage features 6. Nothing. Continuing the trend. All right, now let's see what's at the end here. 11 at the end here is going to be a right turn. So that's going to head in that direction. Okay, now we got the GM phase. So we need to, whoops, wrong cup there. That's our discard cup. We got that. Okay, let's roll that. And what do we find? A character. Okay, so we will discard that. And now we're going to do our DM roll. And so remember, now we're going to be adding 2 and subtracting 2. And we are looking for a 1. There's going to be a trap, and a 12. There's going to be wandering monsters. A 4 minus 2 is 2, so nothing again. I guess we should have actually gone and explored that dungeon, or that room. I forgot about that room there. Well, hey, let's do that. Let's go back. So he goes back down the hall, forgot about that door. And then that will be at the end of that hero phase. We will open up that door and explore this room. So we have now found 3 rooms. So we are going to be moving on to the next room chart. So our chances now of actually finding a quest room are 1 in 12. So let's see what kind of room we find back here. And that is a 6. So, all right, finally, we have a hazard room. A small hazard room. Okay, so this is where the fun can start. I've been having fun already, but I know, I recognize that watching a game being played in which, nothing is happening, it might be a little boring. I understand that. So now we are going to the hazard chart. Let's find that here. And let's see what kind of hazards we're going to find. So we have our hazards here. And we have roll 2d12 to see what kind of hazard we find. And what do we got? We've got 15. So on a 15, we find a magic circle. Let's see, I have something I know that could be a magic circle. Let's use, let's see here. We will go ahead and just throw that down onto the room there. Now, I don't like to roll on the hazard really until I enter the room, because to me, like, sometimes it makes more thematic sense. So we will enter the room on the next turn and then roll to see what kind of magic circle we find. So let's do a GM phase now. And what do we get? Character. All right, so we will discard that. And now we will roll our GM die. 11. All right, so 11 plus 2 wandering monsters, that is 12. So we are going to have a group of wandering monsters now. So when these trigger, we put those back in the cup and we reset our cup. Okay, so now our cup is completely reset again because we have triggered the GM response of putting in some wandering monsters. So now we need to look at our Skaven matrices here for our wandering monsters. They're going to be right there. And populating or placing the monsters in the solo mode, it's a little, there's not really a really good way to do it to make it, well, there's a little bit of strategic thinking in how you want to place them when playing the competitive mode, but in the solo and co-op mode, it doesn't. I've never really had a way to do it that makes much sense, unless I just place the monsters in such a way that, you know, if it was an ambush. If I rolled some kind of ambush or drew an ambush or something, I would place the monsters surrounding the party right up in their face and like let them have a first strike or something like that. But so now we need to place our party out on the table. So I'm going to place our elf there, our warrior there. We'll have the monsters spawn over here. Place our wizard there. One thing I don't like about Advanced HeroQuest, and I did mention that in the review, is the tiles are a little small for the bases of the heroes. So you kind of have to like push stuff to the side. But now let's see here what's going to come up on our wandering monster matrix. A 7. Okay, well, we just have one Night Runner. All right, where was my Night Runner? So we are going to be using the Night Runner model from the Silver Tower. So maybe he came running from around this corner and was right there, but let's see what his stats are. Well, I guess that's the Gutter Runner from Silver Tower. I don't think I have an actual Night Runner model, so we're just going to use him though. All right, so our Skaven Night Runner. The point value is 3, a weapon skill of 7, ballistic skill of 7. He's got a strength of 5, a toughness of 5, bravery, intelligence. There's his chart there. So he's fighting with a sword. Okay. So he has a movement of a speed of 12. Wow, he's very fast. So we could actually put him quite a ways away to where he would have to, well, let's see. Let's roll initiative and see who gets. So the elf adds a +1 to our initiative roll. So this is going to be the monster roll. This will be our party roll. And 7 and a 12. So the monster is up in initiative. So we will actually make it more difficult for the heroes to get to him because he is faster. And so our fastest hero, I believe, is our elf with the speed of 9. So let's just place him like up to 10 away, so the heroes can't get to him at their first turn. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we'll place him back here. So the heroes are going to have to chase him because he is faster and he won the initiative. So the first thing you do on a combat is you have your hero phase. The heroes can attack and then move, or they can move and attack. Pretty simple. You can do some other things like opening and closing doors. Certain monsters, if they're sentries, they can move into, like, they can open unexplored doors and maybe trigger more monsters to help in the fight. And then we're also going to be drawing these, looking for characters, ambush, and fate tokens for the monsters to use. Okay, so let's go first. Let's take our warrior here. He has a speed of 8 and move him up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now he could run and get into the monster's face, but I think I might want to have my dwarf try to do that if he can. My dwarf's speed is actually the warrior's speed is actually 6 because he is wearing armor. And the dwarf only has a speed of 4 right now, so he's pretty slow. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4. And I am going to try to have my my dwarf run. And I did forget, just real quick, the rules on running. I can't remember if it's a D12 or a D6 you roll, but let me see. You get to roll an extra dice, and you get to move. So the running rules are right at the top there. Can't quite get it on camera. A model can run instead of making an attack. First, as usual, the model is moved. Its speed characteristic. Then you roll a D12. On a 2 to 12, you may move that many extra spaces. If you roll a 1, the model stumbles and cannot move any extra squares. All right, so let's see if my dwarf can run or not. 3. Wow, not very good, but he can move ahead. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so let's have my elf now. My elf will move up to 9. So let's have my elf move there. And then perhaps take a shot with his arrow. And he should be able to hit him from there. So ranged attacks are as follows. You look at how many squares they are away, and then this tells you what you have to hit on your roll. So we are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 squares away. And so we have to get a 5 up to hit. And there is a 3. That is a whiff. So we've used 1 of his arrows. So we are down to 11 arrows. Now the arrows you can recover at the end of combat. Now my wizard, I think we're just going to have him move up to there. And then on the GM roll now, the GM phase, the first thing we're going to do is we are going to draw our token. And we find a wandering monster. Now wandering monsters, according to my house rules, during the GM phase, they don't do anything. So those just get discarded. And now there is a roll. So many charts, so many charts. But let's see here, solo advanced rules. All right, the GM phase. So we have like this little tactics table here. Roll the dice at the start of each GM phase and refer to the tactics table. Decide what the monsters do this turn. Note that there are 2 parts to the table. One for use if all the monsters are armed with hand-to-hand weapons, and one if the monsters have ranged weapons. So I only have hand-to-hand weapons. And so on reinforcements, roll up a random group of wandering monsters and place them according to the rules above. Then carry on with the turn. All the monsters use move and attacks this turn. So I don't really follow this move and attack and then move. I try to play the monsters as deadly as possible, but I will roll to see if I have any more monsters. Nope. Okay, so we're just going to have this Skaven Night Runner is going to move up and try to slash at this dwarf here. And so let's see here. The dwarf's weapon skill is 8. And on the combat chart here, the Skaven needs to roll an 8 or higher to hit the dwarf. And there is a 6. He whiffs. Okay, so now it is our hero's turn again. Now our dwarf is in what's called the zone of death, and those are the 4 spaces orthogonal to the model. If you have a weapon with reach, like a spear or a halberd, then the diagonals are also part of the zone of death. Once you move into an enemy's zone of death, you have to stop. But if you start your turn in the zone of death, you can move away. But we're not. We're just going to face off with this Night Runner here. And so our dwarf is going to attack. The Night Runner has a weapon skill of 7. And so our dwarf needs to get a 6 or higher to hit. And there is a 4. That's a big whiff. Our warrior will move around to the side here. And let's see what our warrior needs to hit for a weapon skill of 7. A 6. And there is an 8. So the warrior hits. So when you hit, you look at your weapon here. Damage dice. All right, so 4. So I get 4 dice. I do criticals on 12. Fumbles on 1. And he has 3 wounds. And he has a toughness of 5. So any roll over a 5 or 5 up is a wound. All right, there is only 1 wound. Okay. So we'll take our wounds here and place a 1 by the Night Runner there. All right, so who's up next? It looks like the wizard, but I don't really want to use any of my spells just on one guy. So I will go ahead and have this elf do a shoot an arrow at him, and he is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces away. So we are still looking at a 5 up, and there's a 6. All right, so we hit. Our longbow does damage dice of 4. And again, we need to get a 5 or up. 1, 2, 3. 3 hits and a critical miss. So I believe at critical miss, actually on a range, it actually will hit the one of our heroes who is adjacent. If I remember correctly, I'll look up that rule off camera. But we did do enough damage to kill this Skaven there. And then we need to now roll for our treasure. So monster treasure table here. We have a Skaven Night Runner. And what do we got here? We rolled a 4. Oh, so that's like the low 10 gold pieces for the party. And I will write that down here on our little post-it. 10 gold crowns. All right. So I do need to check to see on a fumble for range. I believe either our warrior or our dwarf is going to take a hit on that, but I will double check that. So we have done our first combat finally. After all of that time, we finally found something to do in the dungeon except for explore. So I think that's going to be it for this episode. We will come back on the next episode and we will go into this room to see what that magic circle has in store for us. So, all right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.